This is the biggest 12-inch subwoofer that DefBonce makes. This thing's absolutely massive, boasts 4,500 watts, RMS, weighs over 100 pounds, has a insane 4.5-inch coil, carbon fiber dust cap. This thing is nuts. That's right, guys. Huge shout out to, of course, the channel sponsor, DefBonce. They sent me their brand new sub that they just released. This is, of course, the DefBonce Apocalypse 4512R, the biggest 12-inch subwoofer that they make. Real quick, we have a massive, insanely heavy ferrite motor, of course, cast aluminum baskets. They have their aluminum ring around the top here, this absolutely huge mega roll surround, beautiful carbon fiber cone and dust cap, massive 4-gauge push terminals, 3 strands of just insane looking leads in here. Of course, the thing has a 4.5-inch coil, which means there's not a lot of room for a spider, so they got this crazy looking spider in here to allow it to still have, I think it said either 22 or 25 millimeters of X-Max. Now, the sensitivity on this thing is around 85 dB, and the FS is between 39 and 40 hertz, depending on which voice coil configuration you get. This comes in either a dual 1 or a dual 2 ohm, and it retails for $1,249. Of course, you can go grab these things over on Alfred Audio's website, or of course, Big Jeff also carries them if you want to purchase it through a dealer. That being said, guys, this thing is absolutely insane. Cannot wait to throw this in the car and see what it does. Another thing I like about this guy, we've got this big ring on here that is, of course, what holds the spider down. This actually looks like a nice ring. It's not just a real cheap ring that you see in a bunch of more budgets or cookie cutter Chinese subs. Just to give you an idea of how huge this thing is, here is the 3012R. Y'all, this is already a really, really big sub. I believe this has a 300-ounce motor. When it comes to sub, this is kind of the size of sub that I generally like. It's still really big and beefy, takes plenty of power, but it's not super heavy. You don't have a crazy big coil, so you got plenty of room for your spider and whatnot. Whereas, compared to the big boy, y'all, it makes this sub look tiny. This motor is massive, y'all. It is literally as big as the cutout, so it's just barely going to fit. Not looking forward to loading this thing up. It is heavy. Now, they do not have box specs for this thing on their website yet, but I talked to Vladimir over there, who's one of the head guys that lives over here in the United States, and he said throw this thing in about a 2.5 cubic foot box, which is perfect because y'all know my King City Customs box that I got way back in the day is right at 2.5 cubic feet, so that is what we're going to do, guys. I also thought this was kind of cool. We, of course, have DefBonce's biggest amp next to their biggest 12-inch sub. Pretty cool, y'all. Huge shout out to DefBonce for supporting the channel, for sending me this sub to make a review for y'all. Guys, they're absolutely awesome. They send me stuff and they say, Parker, throw literally whatever you want to at it, and if it blows, hey, that's okay, put it upload it. So I just love that they really believe in their products, and all their products have done exceptionally well. Make it through some of the most brutal tests that I do on the channel, no problem. So stoked to try this guy out. And once again, thank you to Alfred Audio. Wired down to 1 ohm. Y'all, this thing is insane. This sub is so big, it barely fit in the hole with having the wires attached. It was actually a huge pain to get it in there without the wires being all pinched up, but got it in there, so let's get to testing. They said Garage sent me one of their remote bass knobs. Of course, a Bluetooth bass knob. Y'all, this will be super handy for their reviews. So we're going to be hooking this guy up. Super stoked to see what this thing does. Insane Sub is putting in work, guys. Beefy fella. Now, of course, I'm used to having 815s in here, so when compared to that, obviously this guy doesn't seem that loud. But for a single 12, it is actually nuts compared to a lot of the other stuff I've done. And it just eats up the power. I haven't smelled it yet. Doesn't make that terrible, like, bottoming out sound that some subs make. Seems to be holding together, doing pretty good. Also, it seems to love this box. Just sounds like it's really getting along with it. So that is, of course, always great. Well, guys, so far this sub is doing awesome. So I'm going to leave it in here. I'm going to bump around with it over the weekend into the next week. Just to make sure everything is good with it. Make sure I don't hear anything weird. Don't have any problems with it. And then from there, of course, do the DB test. See how loud we can get this 12 in the Sequoia. And then we'll do a RMS test. See if this guy can really take that 4,500 watts. And for how long. Let's see what we get. All right, next up, guys. Time to do the DB test on this thing. See how loud this 12-inch sub gets in the Sequoia. We, of course, have the driver's side window open. We have the meter down in the kick. We're going to be trying this guy at 35, 40, and 45 hertz. All right, let's try 35 hertz. Our ohms are rising like crazy, though, so we're not getting a ton of power, but still 4,955 watts. And a 141.8. 40 hertz. 5,360 watts. And there's that 142.2. 45 hertz. Woo! 6,605 watts. And we got a 142.3. Guys, 142s are pretty good for this, for a 12 setup in this thing. Definitely above average. But guys, where I'm really getting hurt is that this thing is, of course, a dual 2. Have it wired down to 1 ohm. Y'all, as you saw there in those burps, we were rising to like almost 3.5 ohms. So the most this guy really was seeing was 5,000 to 6,000 watts, which is just a little bit above its RMS power. Y'all, if this was a dual 1 ohm, we had that wired down to 0.5 ohm, I bet we would definitely get a good deal better scores. Best score I've gotten this out of a 12, I believe, was a 146, but that was with the biggest 12 I've ever had on the channel, that huge EM Audio 12, and that was a dual 0.5 ohm wired down to a 1/4 ohm, and to get that score, I think we put over 11,000 watts through it, so we're getting half the power here, guys, to get a 142. Next thing I gotta say, this little wireless bass knob right here is actually super, super neat. Now, one thing you will notice when we started up here, it says 0 volts. That is a voltmeter. Well, first off, you can see, you adjust the volume there, which is super cool. It's got a bunch of settings. You can do sensitivity. You can adjust your volts to make sure it matches with what your multimeter says, all that good stuff. That being said, this guy does not show volts because I am an idiot. And when I was hooking this guy up, I let 2 wires short out, and it killed the little control panel that it uses to read the volts. Now, fortunately, the owner told me what to get, but the little control thing for the volts, I had to order from China, so who knows when that'll get here. I'll probably make another video going over this, but you can see we got all kinds of settings and whatnot. So pretty cool little unit. If y'all want to go grab this, guys, while it's on sale, while it's still on pre-order, go grab yourself one. These things are pretty cool. Next up, guys, let's push this thing really pretty hard. We'll have the meter on so you can see how much power is going through it. Let's just push it really hard and see what it takes. Right there. Usually, this thing eats up that 4,500 watts for breakfast. The coil on this thing is just out of this world. In doing that test, we were maxing out the sub on some of those notes, 1 and 2. According to the amp, we were clipping a little bit, and this guy still made it through. Next up, let's play some extreme low rebased 20 hertz music through here, just to see how much abuse mechanically this thing can take. All right, next up, we've got a song that's rebased from 45 down to 32 hertz, and it's just non-stop steady bass, so interesting to see how it does. Just a reminder, y'all, we have a 12,000 watt amp on this thing. Of course, we're wired to 1 ohm, and we're bringing this amp up to clipping. Now, of course, we're rising up to like, above 3 ohms, so we're not getting near that 12,000 watts, but 3,000 or 4,000 watts of actual true power. Next up, let's pull this beast out of the box, examine it, make sure nothing's torn, make sure the spider's looking good, make sure all the tinsel leads look good, and then maybe while it's out, we'll do some free air excursion so y'all can see this thing move. Y'all, if you run this up and if you can safely do so, I would highly recommend inverting this guy. Y'all, the motor is so big, you can't fit the motor and the speaker wires in there. Whew, what a pain that was. I weigh about 135 pounds. When I got this sub in the mail per UPS, they said it was 130 pounds. Now, honestly, I kind of don't think it's quite that heavy, but regardless, it's still a stupid heavy sub and just an absolute nightmare to get in and out of this box. Y'all, if you buy one of these, grab a 15 if you're going to mount it regularly. I mean, you might as well if you're going to have something this big anyway, or do it inverted. It took me a while to get this shot with the slow motion. Slow motion is kind of hard to do when you're not outside where it's really nice and bright. Hear this thing at 15 hertz. All right, next up, we're gonna run 40 hertz through this thing. See if it'll last 2 or 3 minutes. Like that, it's 4,500 watts. All right, let's get this timer going. the SMD meter shut off. It went for so long, but y'all, we made it over 4 minutes. All right, we have it on super low power at 15 hertz. Just to keep air moving over that coil. Make sure that thing cools down. All right, there it is, guys. 4 minutes. That is close to 4,500 watts. As I could keep it, at the end, the ohm started rising and the amp started clipping. So I had to turn it down a tad bit to around 4,200 watts. But oh my goodness, guys, this thing is nuts. And y'all, it was crazy when I was sitting there in the car. You could just feel the heat, like, filling up the car. Phew, nuts, guys. Also, it's real quick, what's neat about this bass knob is that it'll auto turn off, but it keeps the volume where it was at when it's off. You can just press the little on button here at the bottom, and it turns back on. Remembers where you left off. And another neat thing is if you want to mute it, just press that, that'll mute it. Press it again, turns it on, but it turns it up on a lower volume so it doesn't just go full blast instantly. So cool. All right, guys, that is the biggest 12-inch sub made by Def Bonce. Absolutely nuts, as you saw there. Obviously, guys, the build quality on this thing is just superb. Absolutely top-notch. Handled everything I threw at it, and I threw a lot. But that's gonna wrap this video up. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Remember, as always, guys, keep basing on.